Okay, we are now looking at number 5 in the practice homework, and this is looking at adjusting the modified IRR for unequal lives. And so the first thing they have you do is just figure out the modified IRRs for each of these projects. I've gone ahead and plugged in the numbers that they're giving, and so the calculation for the modified IRR, just to refresh your memory, you have to assume that you are reinvesting your money at a reinvest rate, which in our case is going to be the same as the discount rate. And so you just invoke this formula where you take the modified IRR of all of these cash flows, remembering that your initial investment has to be negative in order to have an IRR of any kind, and then you give it the discount rate and the reinvest rate as the same number, and so you come up with a 13.95 IRR for this restaurant project. And then we also, again, have a sports facility like we did in the prior example with a 4-year life cycle. And again, if you invoke the same modified IRR formula, which takes the initial investment, the 4 years of cash flow, and now our discount rate is 13%, and so it gives you a modified IRR of 14.32%, which is correct. And now what we need to do, we need to say, okay, we like the IRR best for the sports facility if we don't take into account the fact that they are unequal lives. Right, so we've got a 4-year modified IRR for the sports facility of 14.32. But now we have to adjust these cash flows for unequal lives. Okay, so I've gone and wrote this all out for you already in white color, so I'm going to walk you through all the notes of this. Okay, so here is how you do the adjustment for unequal lives with the modified IRR. So the first thing you need to do is you need to identify which one is a shorter timeline, and that is the sports facility. And this is one of the many reasons why I like to do my timelines horizontally. They don't necessarily work out as well when you're trying to sort of be compact in your presentation, but as far as providing better information, in my opinion, it's better to go horizontally with your timelines. So what you need to do is find the future value of the shorter project, of the positive cash flows, at the end of the longer project's life. So you need to take the future value of this cash flow in year 6, and the future value of this cash flow in year 6, etc. All of these future values you need to calculate. Now, unfortunately, we have this net present value function in Excel, which, as I have tried to emphasize, is not technically the true net present value, right? The NPV function in Excel just gives you the present value of a series of unequal cash flows, but we don't have that function in Excel for future values. Okay, so what we need to do is take the future value of each of those cash flows individually, and then we have to do a manual calculation based on the formulas that are provided in your text. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is take the future values of all of these cash flows beginning in year 1, and then we want to designate them as the future value in the final year of the longer project, which in this case is year 6. Okay, so what I've done to make that easier, right, is I've sort of given index numbers for these headings, right? So, the number of remaining years, the number of periods that we use in the future value calculations. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Okay, we're going to take the future value at this 13%, right, so at our discount rate, and let's go ahead and make that an absolute cell reference so that we can copy our formula over. So we keep the columns stable. The number of periods, right, like I said, this is how many years are remaining. So this is for 5 years. Okay, the payment is 0. So we'll just do another comma. And the present value, remember we need to, if we want to have a positive number, we have to, if we want to have a positive future value, we have to give this a negative present value, right? And so we can just go ahead and close the parens. And actually, yeah, that should work. Okay, 718. Let's just make sure it flows through properly. Yep, it's working. Okay, so these are all the future values of the cash flows from years 1 through 4 taken out to year 6. Okay, so there's our future values. Step 1 is to take the future values of the cash flows beginning at year 1, and then the future value is given as the value in year 6 in this case, or at the terminal, period of time for the longer lived of the investments. So the next thing you do is you calculate the modified internal rate of return, and this may be clearer for you if you're looking at it in the textbook where it's written out in mathematic notation. I'm kind of writing it out in English, sort of, right? So here we go. This is the formula, okay? You add up all the future values, right? So it's the sum of the future values, which in this case is 53, 64, 794. Okay, so it's the sum of the future values divided by the initial investment, and you take that as a positive. Okay, so you take that whole thing, you bring it to the power of 1 over 6 in this case. So 1 over n, which is our number of total years that we are looking at it over, and then that whole thing you subtract 1 from it. So here we go. It's 13.88. Now let me just show you how that calculation actually looks in Excel. So it's the sum of these divided by the negative of the initial investment, right, and we put parenthesis around that whole thing, to the power of, and then you put a parenthesis around your exponent, which is 1 over the number of years, and then you subtract 1 from that whole ordeal, right? And there it is, 13.88%, so we'll put that in here. And, oh, come on. Okay, I can't go backwards and fix a mistake, so I'm just going to talk you through what I did wrong there. What I did wrong was I didn't read the question. They're asking, this first one, they're asking what's the MIRR of the restaurant when you adjust for unequal lives, right? And it doesn't change because you don't adjust it for unequal lives. The MIRR for the restaurant is the same as it was, 13.95. The MIRR of the sports facility, however, is, I hope, going to be that 13.88, which is right. Okay, so based on the adjusted modified internal rate of return, we should pick, all right, so let's see which one's highest now, right? Now the restaurant is more attractive. So when you adjust the IRR for unequal time lives and assume reinvestment at a particular discount rate, then you might get a different answer than your first IRR. So there it is. So that is number 5. I'm going to stop this here, and then we're going to move on to the homework problems from chapter 10.